Hey everyone, and happy Wednesday. I'm Jill the Wandering Stamper, and today we are going to work on a bookbind Z-fold card, and I am going to show you some of the great new products in the new winter or fall winter catalog, the mini catalog that comes out in September and is good through the end of the year. It has lots of holiday products, fall products, Halloween, Christmas, and some in-between kind of everyday things. So make sure you take a look at the mini catalog. There are some great new products in there. You can click on my link below to my blog and it will go take you over to my online store, which has the catalog in there to look at. So let me get started on showing you how to make this card. Let's turn the camera down and we'll get going. Thanks for joining me. Here are some of the gorgeous items that we're going to be using in today's card. I've got our Memento ink that we'll be using to stamp our sentiments. I'm pairing that with some basic gray, so I will set that aside. We are going to use these beautiful earth tone shimmer gems. These are a new product in the mini catalog and they work so well with this card, so we'll be embellishing with that. We may be using some of this natural tones linen thread. I really like it. It's just so beautiful. We're either going to use the brown tone, which is very close to copper clay, or some linen thread. I haven't decided yet, but I wanted to show those to you. We'll be doing some coloring with copper clay and gray granite, alcohol blends possibly. And then here is the beautiful Winterly Treetops stamp set. This is so pretty. You could use this all year round. It's very easy to turn it into a Christmas card, a fall card, or just an everyday card. And of course, I also have the coordinating dies. I've put mine on a magnet and it's got some great pieces. It has this beautiful background piece that you could use for so many other stamp sets that cuts out this sort of frame of leaves, so I can't wait to play around with that. And then there's also a stamp that cuts out the birds in the designer series paper, so I love that. So you can not only die cut your stamped birds, but you could also die cut the birds that are in some of the designer series paper, so I love that. Lots of options for these stamps. And then we are going to, of course, pair it with this absolutely gorgeous designer series paper. This is called Nests of Winter, and it goes with the Nest of Winter, all the suite of products that comes with it. But look at this paper. This is the paper that we're going to use today. It's beautiful, and if you have listened to any of my videos, I've mentioned several times, I absolutely love trees and birds. They are some of my favorite things found in nature. So look at this paper. I mean, just gorgeous. These, like I mentioned, these birds are die cuttable with that die. There's lots of beautiful vivid colors. You can of course make this Christmas or not. It's got some great backgrounds too that go for the holidays and every day. Look at this. I mean, it just goes on and on. It's just so beautiful. I'm really excited that they came out with this paper. So that's what we're going to use today. And since I picked out this design to use, we're going to be pairing it with copper clay and basic gray. These go really well together. They look super pretty, so we're going to put those together. And remember, I don't know if this helps you, but when I decide what designer series paper I want to work with to make a card, I just flip it over and look at the back, and it lists all of the cardstock colors that are in that paper. So it's very easy to make sure that you match all of your products up. So without further ado, let's get started on creating this card. So we're going to start out with our base. The base of the card is going to be copper clay. So I'm going to grab a sheet of copper clay and we're going to cut our base at 4 1/4 by 11. All right, and once that's cut, we are going to flip it over for the long, so the long side is at the top, and we're going to score it at 2 1/8. Move that scoring blade. And then 4 1/4. And then 5 1/2. Very simple. All right, and then we're going to need some additional layers. So we're going to need a piece of the same base, and we're going to cut that at 3 1/4 by 4 1/4. So this is already 4 1/4. It's the other half of that sheet of paper. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut it at 3 1/4 now. Just like that. And then we are going to, now on this card, we're going to do some layering. I don't always do the layering, but I'm going to do it on this card. So I'm going to get, this is where the basic gray is going to come in. So I'm just going to grab some random scraps here. I think that's big enough. And I'm going to first off cut a rectangle just slightly smaller than this. So it's going to be 3 1/8 by 4 1/8. So 3 1/8 by 4 1/8. And that's just so it can layer with just a slight bit of edge showing. And then we are going to grab our designer series paper. Actually, let's cut some white first. I think I've got some scraps here. Yes. All right, so now we're going to do the white for our inside. And that, again, I'm going to layer. So I'm going to cut 3 by 4. And that is for our message in the inside. And then I'm going to, again, pull that larger piece out. I think I can still fit. Let's see if it's big enough. I think it will just fit. I want that to be 3 1/8 by 4 1/8. So that looks like 4 1/8. So now we just need 3 1/8. All right. I'm just going to have just a slight little border around that. All right. And then we're going to do our designer series paper. Actually, that's going to be the first piece we're going to cut is for the front. And we want that to be 3 by 4. Actually, we want that to be, let's see, we're not going to use the white for the front. The white is for the inside. So we're going to have that be 3 by 4, I believe. Yes. All right, so I'm going to cut it 3 inches, and I'm just kind of being mindful of this bird. I want this bird to show, so I just want to make sure he's not going to get cut, and he's not. So now I want to kind of cut this in a way that I've got my birds, and they're not getting cut off. So I think we're going to cut this piece. This is how I do this when I don't want to lose anything. So now if I do 4 1/8, it looks like I just get this little bird. So that's good. Because I want this copper clay sort of shade in there. So that's why I wanted to make sure that was in there. So I just kind of play around with how I'm cutting that. So this little piece is going to layer onto our gray. Actually, I made that a little bit too long. That's supposed to be 4 inches. I'll go back over these measurements. Okay. So this is 3 by 4, and then the layer behind it is 3 1/8 by 4 1/8. So I just made it just a teeny tiny bit bigger. Okay, and then the inside piece is also 3 by 4, and we're going to layer that onto a 3 1/4 or a 3 1/8 by a 4 1/8 piece. So that's going on the inside, and then these 2 layers are going to go onto that cardstock we cut right after the base, which was 3 1/4 by 4 1/4. So we've got 3 by 4, 3 1/8 by 4 1/8, 3 1/4 by 4 1/4. Okay. Now the last thing we want to do is cut the sides of our designer series paper. We want 2 little panels, and I really liked the birch because, let me find the birch here. I pulled it out and then I think I put it back in when I was showing it to you. Let's get that out. There we go. I really like this birch design on the back because it kind of goes along with the feel and the vibe of this card. So we're going to need 2 pieces that are 1 by 4. So, and of course birch, the bark on a birch tree goes across. I know you want to cut it this way, but it actually goes across, so make sure you cut your strips accordingly. So I've cut a 1-inch strip, and then I'm going to cut it at 4 inches, and I'm going to have 2 of those. Okay, and then the last thing we want is a little background to go behind it. So I actually think I am gonna nix having this gray piece. You could totally have this on here. I think I'm gonna leave it out, but I'm gonna use it to cut my pieces for behind this birch. And you'll see when we're assembling what I mean. Sometimes I have it and sometimes I don't. I think on this one, I'm gonna leave it off. And of course, these are all optional things, and I'll have that in the cutting and scoring. If you click on my link, of course, on any of my videos, it'll take you to my blog page. Just search for that video, and it'll give you all of my cutting instructions. Okay, so we have these 2 pieces that are going to layer on here. All right, that's all of our cutting. So we'll get that out of the way. And let me show you, let's get this out of the way. So I'm going to go back over this because I know I switched gears a little bit. So our base is 4 1/4 by 11, and it's scored at 2 1/8, 4 1/4, and 5 1/2. Okay? And then to that, we're going to add to the front of the card, we're going to have another piece of cardstock that's 3 1/4 by 4 1/4. And then this is optional, but I've put a layer that's 3 1/8 by 4 1/8. For that, and then our designer series paper is 3 by 4. Okay, and then we have 2 strips that go on each side. So one is 1 by 4 and one is 1 1/8 by 4 1/8. So we'll have 2 of those. And then we have our piece for the inside that is simply 3 inches by 4 inches. You could put a mat behind it, which would be 3 1/8 by 4 1/8. I've decided not to do that piece. All right, so now that we have all of that cut, it's really super simple. So I'm going to show you the way I like to put this together. So you have your large panel and then your 3 score lines. So what I like to do is first fold the score line that folds it in half. That is the 5 1/2 inch score line. So I burnished that really well with the bone folder. And then starting from the left, I'm going to fold that in. So that folds to the left, and then I'm going to fold it to the left one more time and burnish that with the bone folder. Okay, so now this little panel right here is, we're going to glue that down. So that's where that little book bind comes from. So let me grab my liquid glue here, and you just want to use a nice strong adhesive on this part so that it holds well. So I'm just putting a little liquid glue, and I'm just going to push it down and just give it a good burnish just to make sure it stays. I just like to rub it with the bone folder a little, and it just kind of creases that down. So that's the way our card opens, okay, just like that. So the next thing we're going to do is go ahead and glue these layers together. So I just put a little liquid glue on the back. I just made, and I'll show you the sample, I just made 24 of these cards for my daughter for her baby shower thank you cards. She is due to have grandbaby number, well, it's her first child, but it will be our 3rd grandchild, and she's due any minute now. We're just waiting. We're kind of in that little waiting pattern. I'm actually taking the birth photos for her, so I can't wait to get that phone call. I'm kind of nervous and excited at the same time, because I want to do a good job on those photos for her. She's doing a water birth at a birthing center, so it's unlike any delivery I had. I'm super excited for her. It's exactly how she wanted to have a baby, so I'm really happy that she's doing what she wants. And it's going to be a really neat experience for me to be part of that. Okay, so I have those 2 pieces, so now I'm going to go ahead and just put some liquid glue on the back of these. There's really no up or down on these, so I am just layering the first one on that left side of the card. It's very easy to know where to put it because we've got that panel right there. Okay, so that's going there. And then the other one's going to go on the opposite side. Try to put my camera down a little lower than normal. It gives me a little less workspace, but I feel like maybe it's easier for you guys to see it. I don't know. Sometimes I worry about how well you can see things. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is the same thing. I'm going to layer these pieces. And you could do stamping on these. You could use a piece of white cardstock and do stamping and not use designer series paper. And there's so much versatility with this card design. As you'll see my other cards, they're all totally different. It's just a really fun, easy, relaxing card to make. Look how pretty this paper is. I love this paper. It's so pretty. Just going to add some liquid glue on the back of this one, and I'm just layering. So if you wanted to make 24 of these like I did, you just do an assembly line, and it really doesn't take too long. All right, now before I attach this, I've decided, since this is sort of fall and I'm gonna think things are crisp, even though it doesn't feel crisp yet outside, I'm going to add a little drop of Wink of Stella to each one of these little buds. It just gives them a little bit of a sparkle, and I think it's super pretty. So I'm gonna do that really quick. My Wink of Stella, I use it so much. I buy 2 or 3 of them at a time because I go through so much of it. But it's such an easy way to embellish a card, and you really can't mess it up. And it goes over anything that you've colored. It goes over designer series paper. It does really well on pretty much anything you want to use it for. And I use it to help things stand out that might not automatically stand out. So I know you can't see it on camera, but it adds a little shimmer to all those buds. I really like that. So now we're going to attach that to this panel here. So I just put a little liquid glue all the way around, just like that, and then kind of hold it closed a little. And what I'm going to do is that I'm popping it right over the top, and then I'm just adjusting it all so that it's centered over the card. So I just kind of figure out where I want it to lay, and then I just make sure all the edges are all butted up. So there we go. So that is how that card opens. Super pretty, right? So now we're going to do some decorating. So let's go ahead and switch gears and work on the inside. I got out a piece of paper. Here we go. All right. So we're going to, I think we're going to put, I'm going to do this one exactly how I did my other sample. And I'm going to do Thinking of You inside. And I'm going to do that with basic gray. This would also look pretty in the copper clay. So I'm going to ink this up. I'm going to stand up and I'm going to attempt to do this straight the first time. Let's see if I can do it. Oh, nope. Do you guys laugh at me? I never seem to be able to get things right when I'm under pressure. Okay. Whew, that's straight. Thank goodness paper has 2 sides. All right. Now, that says, Thinking of You Always. Super pretty. So on my other sample, I stamped one of the birds and colored it in. But I think on this one, I'm going to pull in these little... Oh, where's all my stamps? We're going to pull in these little buds so that they carry over from the outside of the card to the inside. I'm just cleaning off my stamp right here. And I'm looking for my other block. So I think I'm going to go ahead and use this and put a couple of these on here just to carry them over from the front of the card. And I'll show you how I did my other sample. My other sample, I did the bird. So I'm just going to, I think I'll just put one. I think one is good. So I just stamped that in Memento ink. Clean that off a little. And then I'm going to take my wild wheat. And if you look at the designer series paper, the wild wheat is just very subtly, actually this isn't wild wheat, copper clay. Why am I saying wild wheat? It's just kind of colored around the edges. So I'm going to do exactly that. I'm just going to color around the edges of this. Very simple. And then I'm just going to lightly color this stalk. Now a little tip, if you have a really small space and you're worried about getting outside the lines, you can dot this. It does spread a little bit, so if you put dots on it, it gives it just enough to soften it up and fill it in without going over the lines. I'm going to try this out. This is the Stampin' Blends, the color remover, color lifter. I'm going to add just a little bit to the edges and see if that softens it. This is just a total guess here. Oh, it does. So that works really well. The color lifter is in case you get outside the lines, you can lightly color over it and it'll just kind of make it disappear. But it also works really well to lighten your colors. So if you want to lighten it a little bit, just dab a little bit of that on there. I did, and it took away all of the harshness. So that looks really good. And we'll go ahead and add some Wink of Stella, just like we did on the front, to give it a little shimmer, just to make it pretty. Okay, that looks good. Now I can see I have a little ridge where my cutting line was. If you take your bone folder and rub it along the edges of your paper, you get rid of that ridge. That's because I had flipped my card over and the other side was the side I cut. So if your cutter leaves a little ridge on the edge of your paper, that's how you flatten that out and you can no longer see it. So making sure your card's facing the right direction, I've made that mistake. Now we're just going to layer that piece right inside. I like to look at it this direction so I can make sure everything's in there. And so now when you close your card, it's completely hidden. But isn't that pretty how they exactly match up? So pretty. All right, so now what are we going to do with the front? So before you came on, I grabbed the Happy Labels Pick-a-Punch. I love this thing. I use it a lot. It's great for larger things that maybe you wouldn't be able to use a regular punch for, or you don't want to bring out dies, or you don't have a die big enough. So I stamped A Friend Like You Brings Me Happiness. I believe this is 7/8 inches wide and it's about 4 1/4 long. And I punched each end and stamped on it, of course. And then I cut a slightly larger piece of that copper clay to attach on there. So just a simple way to make a tag. So I am actually, before I do that, I'm going to add linen thread or some of this really pretty copper clay. I haven't used this yet. This is my first time using it. What I wondered is if it's going to hide the words too much. So let me see. Actually don't think it will, so we'll go ahead and use this. So again, this is the brand new Natural Tones linen thread. So it kind of has a green, a blue, and this copper color. And I think the copper looks really good with the copper clay. So what I do to get this to stay is I grab a couple dabs of just Stampin' Seal and I make sure I'm putting it on the end of the card that I'm putting the string on. So that just gives my string something to grab onto. And then I'm going to just wrap this around a couple times. Just like this, and you can have it touch those sticky parts. Just wrap it around 2 or 3 times. Don't make it too tight because it will bow your, see what I did? It will make your work bow a little bit. So don't make it too tight. But just wrap that around. So I'm going to do maybe 3 times, twice, 3 times. Let's see. Just kind of wrap it around until you're happy with it. think 3 times is good. All right, so now that I know that, and these little notches that are in this punch hold the string perfectly. So now that I have that on there, I'm just going to make sure it sticks to the sticky spot. I'm going to cut this excess. All right, and you're probably going, oh my gosh, but it covers up the words. Well, it doesn't if you move it down a little. So if I move it down to this one, it's perfect. And what I'm going to do is grab another little piece of it, and I'm going to tie a little knot. And this is why sometimes I'll just use the linen, because it's light colored. Let's see how this looks. So before I put it on, I'm just going to take a look. I like it. All right, and then you can manipulate where you want this little knot, if you want it down there. All right, so now that I have that on there, I'm going to grab my glue dots, my dimensionals. They're right here in front of me. And when I add these, I'm going to make sure I strategically place them over the string. That's just another way to make sure that your string stays where you want it to stay. So I'm going to put one here. We're going to put one up here. So this just helps keep that string exactly where it's supposed to be. This one I'm going to use half of one. This is where these little halves come in. They work really well for this kind of stuff. All right. So what I've done is I've put a good amount on there because I know this card's going to get played with a lot. But I wanted to make sure that everything's anchored, the ribbon's anchored down, so I don't have to worry too much about it moving now. So I am using my take your pick tool to take these off. Otherwise, they'll be floating around my RV, sticking to everything. Ask me how I know about that. We've had the dog walk by and have them stuck right to him. It's kind of funny. Okay. So there we go. That's pretty. Now I'm going to lay this across like this because I don't want to cover up the bird. And I don't know, that's kind of boring. So I think I'm just going to put it this way. So I know I only want my glue in the middle portion. We don't want it going off the end of the card, right? So how about right about there? All right. And then you can do any last minute adjusting you want. I'm trying to move that little string. There we go. That looks pretty. All right, now let's go ahead and grab some of these earth tone shimmer gems, shimmer dots. These are super pretty. And I think I'm going to go with this little light color. I used the coppery ones on my other card, but I kind of want to play with these this time. So I'm just going to add a couple just for a little extra glam. All right, that's it. That was our card. I told you it's an easy card. So let's take a look and see what we've got. So look how pretty. So pretty, very simple. You could actually add a second panel back here if you wanted to write more of a message, but I mean, this card is just so sweet and simple. Here's the one I did earlier today, and I used the linen twine instead. I used a different color of the gems, and I created the bird inside, and I colored him with copper clay and a little bit of gray granite, I believe, or smoky slate, one of those two. I think it was gray granite, so I could bring in the colors that are in that cardstock. So there is that one. And then this is the card I made for my daughter for her thank you cards for her baby shower. It says, "Thank you, sending thanks and much love," and I used the Wildly Flowering Designer Series paper. I pretty much used the whole pack. And there's 3 or 4 different color combos of the paper, so I just kind of switched up the cardstock and I made her 6 of each design. Super pretty and plenty of room for her to write her message. And then wait till you see, oh my gosh, this last card is so cute. I just can't even stand it. Look at this. How cute is this? This comes from, let me show you. This is from the brand new Playful Ghosts. I did a recent video using Playful Ghosts to make a cute little Halloween card. I am in love with this set. It's so simple. It's just kind of relaxing to use because there's not a lot of intricate coloring or anything. It's just a very fun, playful stamp set. So what I did is I paired it with, this is another brand new product, Iconic Celebrations. It's 6x6 paper, and let me tell you, it has New Year's, it has Halloween, it has Thanksgiving, it has Christmas, and it has everyday stuff. It has fall patterns, it has Christmassy colors, it has polka dots. I mean, even it has Valentine's Day. It has everything. Celebrations that you could use for anniversaries. This is such a fun pack of paper, and it's 6x6. I know I'm going to use this all up. So I paired it with the paper that has pumpkins, and these pumpkins are Cajun Craze and Mossy Meadow. So that's what I created my card base on. And then I used the Stylish Shapes dies to cut a couple circles. But wait, look at the inside. How cute is that? I used some masks and created this little bundle of pumpkins and had him popping up behind them. But look at this. I don't know how this worked. I guess I have a little bit of an engineer in me. I figured out a way to make him pop out, and look, he says boo. So what I did is I stamped him and fussy cut him, and I cut out the last 2 parts of the pumpkin. So the pumpkin is this size, but I cut off this section and this section so that it was smaller so it would fit behind the other pumpkin. And then I glued Boo on. And then how I attached it is I put a piece of twine or linen thread on the back of this pumpkin and the back of this pumpkin while it was raised up to this level. So it can't go any higher than this. And then when you pop him back in, it's just a little bit of linen thread, so he stays right there. And then I created this cluster of pumpkins so that I could raise the whole thing up on dimensionals. And then I put some very thin dimensionals that I trimmed on the edge so that the whole thing is very stable. And he just pops up and says boo. Oh, I can't believe it worked. And then on the back I put a couple of dimensionals, but I didn't peel off the paper, so that way he kind of stays popped out from the card and you can just pull him in. I had so much fun making him, and I could not believe it actually worked. I wasn't sure. So to create that card, I also just created my own little background by stamping Trick or Treat on the back. So super cute card. If you want a fun little Halloween card, this is a great little set to play with. So there are my samples. I can't decide which one I love most, but I think I'm most proud of this one just because I figured out how to do that off the top of my head, which I was super happy about. So if you want to see all of these samples and the products I used and have all of the cutting instructions for this, don't forget to click on my link below to my blog so that you can get that information. And if you don't already subscribe, hit the subscribe button so that you know every time I post a new video. So I am Jill the Wandering Stamper. I had so much fun with you today, and I hope you get a chance to craft today. See you next time.